So today, as you know, cyber threats evolve endlessly. So we can see account compromission, internal attacks. They go unnoticed with the traditional solutions that we have with static rules. In this context, UEBA, user and entity behavior analytics, is a key lever for detection.
L'UEBA repose sur l'analyse comportementale
The UEBA,
comme les applications,
we have connected objects, the machine accounts, etc. So the objective of the UEBA is to detect risks and threats thanks to artificial intelligence and machine learning. Contrary to traditional SIEM, triggering alerts based on predefined rules, UEBA learns constantly the use of the habits of users to detect gaps. Taking few examples, we can be alerted when an employee uses a great number of sensitive data, or a user's account connected from a country where the company has no activity whatsoever, or an attacker laterally moving in the network using authorization. Integrating this behavioral analysis to the zero trust strategy and advanced detection, we can better anticipate cyber attacks, reduce false positives, and improve the reactivity of security teams. But how can we roll out these solutions? How can we guarantee their safety whilst keeping up with ethics and regulation? I will let Michael introduce himself first of all.
So thank you very much. And I hope those of you who can't speak English have your headphones on. I speak very, very fast, so I'll try to speak slow. I've been fighting cybercrime very actively and doing IT operations for about 28 years. So yes, I'm as old as I look, maybe older. I was fighting cybercrime before the internet really was popular. And I have to say that I spend a lot of time with the US military. I spent a lot of time in large industries like a pharmaceutical company with 60,000 people, 17 billion in revenue, helping them fight against cybercrime. And I work for a company today called Hayes that puts people in jobs. Hayes puts a person in a job every 22 seconds. And that takes a lot of cooperation, a lot of sensitive data being shared to do that. So we must not only protect ourselves as a company, but our clients and the people that we support to give them these jobs. And so I'm very happy to be here, and I thank you very much for the introduction and for the opportunity. And new technology is so important to us, but new technology always brings challenges. Maybe it scares us a little bit. Maybe it works in a way we didn't expect. And so we must learn together to adopt together, because the criminals have an advantage. And we need every advantage we can get, and I'll talk about that more throughout the day. So thank you for allowing me to be here, and I hope my English is okay for you to understand.
Maud?
Oui, bonjour, donc Maud Lambert, donc je suis avocat.
Maud Lambert, I'm a lawyer in Steering Legal, and we are responsible for all the questions to do with IT and data. It's a specialty which does exist because there are several people asking me why I was here. All our customers are IT service suppliers or people requiring IT solutions. And when they're buying that, or because they've got a transformation project, they're wondering, they're asking themselves some questions. So how do we match the regulation and the real current environment in an internal project? Thank you both of them for this presentation. So we will start with questions first of all. Michael, as CISO, what are the limits of the traditional approach of threats detection? How does UEBA bring this suitable solution, and which are the comprehension indicator, IOC, the most difficult to detect with traditional tools?
I'm listening to the translation of that just to make sure I understood the question. So, you know, a lot of people, if I say the word hacker, what's the first image that comes into your head? It's the hacker in the hoodie and the guy on the keyboard, right? That's not what cybercrime is. Cybercriminals look like me. They look like you. They work in a very normal environment. They have offices where they sell things. So the traditional model of fighting cybersecurity is a bit static. And I love cars, and so I will use cars to help understand the static model and the more advanced model we're talking about. So if you see cars driving on the Autobahn or on the highway, okay, and police officers are watching, are they speeding? Are they running red lights? Are they driving recklessly? Behaviors you can see, things you recognize, then you take action and you take them off the highway because they're dangerous and they're breaking the law. That's static, you can see that. Now what about somebody who's driving a car and following all the laws? What about somebody who robs a bank and instead of getting in the car and speeding away, he just drives away calmly and he looks like every other car driving? You don't notice there's a criminal in that car who stole lots of money in that car because he looks like everything else driving. He doesn't stand out. But what if you were to be able to track the license plate that he stole, that wasn't reported stolen yet, and that license plate normally doesn't drive this route and doesn't go these places? If you were able to do that, you would say, hey, something's not right. This car is somewhere it doesn't belong, and it's not normally here. In fact, the driver's still at home. What's going on? Then you investigate, you find out, hey, there's a criminal in the car. But if you do that, would you want your license plate in all your locations tracked by the police every single minute, every single second? Perhaps not. So there's implications in doing something like this. But that's how UEBA works, right? Is it looks for patterns that are not normal. It looks for behavioral patterns. It looks for, somebody who's working from 9 to 5 in Germany, doing their job, and then all of a sudden that same person 2 hours later is downloading mega files from Japan. How do you get to Japan so fast? He's never in Japan, he's never working there. Yeah, but the files that he was downloading would have never triggered anything if you didn't know this person normally works in Germany and not in Japan. So when you look at behavioral patterns of the individual, see, there's a thing called plain sight, hiding in plain sight. Hiding in plain sight means that I'm doing something wrong and you don't notice it because I'm not standing out. I'm not downloading a lot of data. I'm downloading a little bit of data, and it just doesn't trigger any of the normal traditional laws and patterns that we look for. But if my behavioral patterns are tracked and I'm doing something that's outside of my normal behavior pattern, I see insights, I'm able to respond as a fighter. But if I do something like that, it might have some implications on my rights as a human being. It might violate some freedoms that I have. And we have to be very careful how we use this technology because we want to fight back, we want to protect people, but we don't want to violate rights and responsibilities and privacy people have. Hope that gives a nice illustration of the difference between traditional and UEBA.
Thank you very much. Maud, l'analyse...
Maud, behavioral analysis lies on the use of several data, which legal protection must be taken at the root of it when implementing a UEBA, and the control of behavior, might that lead to some stakes in cyber monitoring of the employee? Which legislation are there? Without questioning the type of tools we're talking about, because there's a strong interest in analyzing a little bit more than just
un état qu'on connaît sur des situations
a state of cyber monitoring. We're dealing with behavior now. We are part of an organization. It's an organization which is closed with data related to the employee. So you've got to have in mind the multi-layer approach. You've got the framework of the organization. Every time you do something in an organization, you follow the behavior code of conduct, the charter, which is going to be driven internally, and there is also the labor code, so a set of regulations that you've got to comply with if you work in a company. So we've got the labor code, which states that when we introduce a new element of technology in a company and with the staff, the employee must know that he might be monitored, kept an eye on, and he's got to be informed of that. So that's the first layer. Then you've got the GDRP, the maturity of the employees are aware of this particular law, and you know that when you use data, there is this law to be respected, the GDPR law, and then we've got all the recommendations done by the CNIL explaining that when we use this type of data, we're going to have to comply with some elements of law, and the new AI regulation, which is the extra layer being added now, which has to do with high-risk information systems. So the question is, can this tool be considered as a high-risk tool? In the definitions, and I'm not going to bore you with the details, but it's an information system which can be used as a security component in the management of critical infrastructures or for the management of water or gas supply. So can this tool be part of this type of definition? It depends on the sector you're working in, because I think that we can understand that when you are a water or gas supplier, or if you have a critical infrastructure, I mean, this element is necessary to guarantee the security. So let's move on to the rollout and the implementation of the UEBA. Michael, at Hayes, or based on your experience, which are the technical challenges and organizational challenges when you've got to implement a UEBA solution?
Okay, so let's just start with a question for all of you, okay? If you have one of these, raise your hand. If you know somebody who has one of these, raise your hand. Do you know what this device collects about you? And you let it collect things about you. So I'm asking another question, okay? What do you think? Are there more IoT devices, smart devices in the world, or internet users in the world? Which one are there more of? So if you think there's more devices in the world, raise your hand. Yeah. Now, did you know there are 15 billion IoT devices in the world, and there's 15 billion and 7 billion internet users? By 2030, it's projected to be 30 billion IoT devices and only 8 billion users. Do you see a discrepancy here in growth and speed? Each one of these devices is collecting something about you, something about your life and your patterns. And that is a very complex ecosystem of data to collect and try to use. Now, in order to use UEBA and this wonderful technology, which is very helpful, we must understand the implications of using it, the violations of privacy that could cause, and what kind of permissions to get. But at the same time, we have to understand what data is useful. So imagine all that data coming to you with no context. It's just noise. You don't know what to do with it. So what you do is you look for patterns. You use this data, you use this technology to identify patterns, baseline patterns, and then you look for anomalies to the patterns. Now just think, what if you did your pattern development, your baseline, during Black Friday, or during Cyber Monday, or during, another very high-end, high-volume shopping year? Well, your patterns and your baselines are totally wrong because that's an anomaly. So when you're trying to put these systems into place, you're trying to find a stable baseline, and it's very hard to find one because companies are dynamic, countries are dynamic, companies that operate in multiple countries are dynamic. So one of the challenges is finding the right baseline. The other challenge is making sure you're not just getting noise. It's finding the right operational context to use to make decisions to say that it's actually truly related to something malicious. Yeah, so in the example that I used of the bank robber, right? So if the bank robber is just driving and going the same speed as everybody else and not doing anything that's out of the ordinary, and then you trigger on that license plate, can the police officer actually stop that bank robber? Does he have just cause? Does he have some kind of indication? Because you have to have just cause to stop somebody. Does he have that? So these are some of the challenges when you use this technology is traditional things people are used to. You can see it, you can feel it, you understand it a little bit. Non-traditional things is human behavior. Human behavior is complicated. We don't understand human behavior as humans. Do we think machines understand human behavior better than us? No, but it can find patterns that we can't find, patterns we can't see. So the real trick is trying to find a balance between operational context and systems that we're used to and new layers of things we're not used to. And the way I like to explain that is imagine that cybersecurity and data scientists got married and they had a baby called UEBA. Now, when you make this marriage and you bring these people together, yeah, a marriage in the beginning, you learn things about each other you didn't know, even though you were dating for a really, really long time. And the first few years are kind of turbulent, they're kind of difficult. But you work through those things, you get to know each other, you get to understand each other. And then the child is born, and the life just changes again completely. Yeah, so when we introduce this kind of system, we're creating a marriage between data science and cybersecurity and generating twin children, yeah, that are called UEBA, yeah, and AI. And that family operates in a complex way that we have to change and adjust and get used to. Hope that answers your question.
Et du coup, est-ce qu'on utilise l'UEBA?
Do we use UEBA as an autonomous solution or integrated to a SIEM? Which is the best solution according to you?
So there's no set solution, right? So it depends on your organization. So if you want to roll UEBA out in a very small piloted way, then don't integrate it, because then you're collecting things you don't want to collect. Yeah, and so I'm a big fan in use case-based development analysis, right? So if you don't have strong use cases and strong specific things to test and do slowly, don't do it yet, because you're going to get unintended consequences, because the kind of data you're collecting inside your SIEM, it's lots of complex data. And if you start adding human behavioral analysis, now you've made a child called a psychologist. So now your SOC analyst has to be a SOC analyst, a data scientist, and a psychologist. He's not qualified for that. So I say take it slow. Don't go directly into your big systems yet. Do small, controlled pilots. Do small, very specific use cases and see what works and what doesn't. Learn from that small marriage before you go make a giant family of 1,600 small children, right? So that's very hard to manage a family that large.
It's true. Maud, quelle clause?
Maud, which contractual clause do you have to plan with the UEBA editors to guarantee of legal compliance and responsible use of the data? I think that this is not only the contractual aspect, but it's an important part. I mean, when you select this type of supplier, if you want to be practically minded, you should have a security annex in which you would integrate the requirements that you want to be followed by this supplier, whether they are legal ones because they're necessary to introduce a system which will analyze the behavior of people's private life, because there are lots of standard behaviors before we come across the abnormal behavior being detected. So, yes, I mean, we got to know which security requirement is needed, because each of these security measures have got to comply with the reference document, whether it's IA regulation, whether NIS 2. It depends on the sector you're in. And in this annex, you can also integrate requirements to do with the GDRP certification if it's part of an SIA. So it's down to the employer or the organization wanting to integrate that to monitor that, because the responsibility is yours for the data of the employees being part of this collect and control. So it's not just these contractual measures, because he will check the rules that he wants to see complied with. So it could be an ethics code, good practices, and you've got to know where the data will be, how long they will be stored, whether if the editor stores all this data.
Michael, quels sont les sources?
Michael, which are the sources of data the most strategic to detect relevant threats without generating too many false positives?
This is very, very hard to find things that not generate false positives, right? But the spaces that you want to look in is identities, for example. You know, what happens with your identity? So criminals like to get identities. And once they have an identity, they look like a normal employee, and then they move and they get another identity, and they're just moving around the environment, and they're looking normal. They're changing cars and they're driving normal. They're hiding in plain sight. So it's so hard to find what's normal and what's abnormal if you're not able to take a baseline, right? And when you take a baseline, you have to look at some just normal everyday things that people don't want you looking at. Yeah, so who's ever shopped at Amazon? Anybody shopped at Amazon before? Yeah? Did you know, good, you're very smart. Yeah, I wouldn't go to Amazon if I was you. Yeah, so when you go to Amazon, does it ever come up and tell you, other people are buying this, wouldn't you like to buy this? And you say, hey, how did it know I like that? Yeah, because they're using UEBA. Yeah, they're watching other buying, predicting patterns, and they're sharing that with you without you knowing that they're sharing your buying patterns. Does that make you uncomfortable? Does that make you not want to shop there anymore? It doesn't matter, because where else can you go, right? So the world is moving on, the world is changing, and we have to understand we must move on and we must change with it. So it's very difficult to figure out which kinds of behavioral patterns matter. And so if you want to get really good at that, remember I said you're having a marriage between cybersecurity and data science, and you're spawning off UEBA, you're spawning off MI, you're having a child that's a psychologist. So go get your uncle who's a psychologist, say, come in with me, and use a psychologist who understands behavioral patterns to help you figure out what indicators of compromise to do. And before you bring in your uncle or your aunt who's a psychologist, make sure you talk to your cousin who's a lawyer, because you don't want to break any laws and do anything wrong. So my point is you have to build a broader community to be able to find the right indicators of compromise. And if you're trying to do it only from a tech perspective or an IT perspective, you're not going to find the right things. You get a lot of false positives. You need the behavioral scientists, you need the sociologists, you need them involved with you to understand what you're looking at, because I'm telling you, technology guys, how many here are technology people? Yeah? How many of you chose technology because it was easier to deal with technology than people? Didn't want to deal with people. Yeah, I see quite a few hands up. Yeah, so most technology folks are not into human being interaction because we're technology folks. Yeah, so you need people who are into the human sciences, behavioral sciences with you to help you, or you're not going to find these patterns that you're looking for.
OK. Maud,
Off mic.
So what kind of challenges do you have when you deploy a behavioral solution? One is figuring out what systems to bring telemetry from, what systems to actually use. Because if you don't understand your business or your entity or your organization, how it runs, then you don't know what to look for. You don't know what systems to tap into. So I spend a lot of time around the world, traveling all over the world, talking to CEOs, CFOs, politicians, leaders, technology people, and I ask them if they understand what they have, and most of them say they don't understand what they have, they don't know what they have, so you spend a lot of time figuring this out. Now the criminals actually help you with this, because what they do is they enumerate the environment, it's called. So they run their own little UBAs, and they look for patterns and statistics in business, illegally doing all this, finding out what so the criminal knows your enterprise better than you do. So one of the biggest challenges is actually knowing what your systems actually do from a business perspective, and how that impacts the human being and in their life. And if you start collecting, if let's say somebody comes in and says, hey, these are the top 5 most critical systems we use, and you say, okay, I'm going to collect from those, you have no idea what those systems do and a cascading effect 4 or 5 systems down the road. So you have to have a very broad architectural view and an understanding of operations and processes and how they work, and that's very, very hard to get. Yeah, most companies struggle with this in regular static IT, not just with UEBA. Yeah, but the better you get at this, and the more you can use technology to help you find out what's out there, the better you can figure out what systems to use. It's not I can't tell you these 5, that's the answer. If I told you that, go run the other way, because I don't know what I'm talking about, right? So you must choose based on organizational context, culture, laws, countries that they operate in. And when you have this bigger operational view picture, we call it an architecture, when you have the operational view, then you can look at the systems view. And so without the operational view, I would say don't go collect anything, because no systems you put yourself at high risk for collecting something you didn't really want to have, and now you've got it and you got a big legal problem.
Ça répond à votre question? Super. On y viendra juste après. Alors Maud, il disait qu'il avait d'autres questions.
He said that he had more questions, a lot more, more questions.
Donc Maud,
Maud, I wanted to ask you, what are the limits, the legal limits to collect and treatment of data, of behavior data in a cybersecurity environment?
Alors là, pour disons, aller un tout petit peu plus
To go a bit deeper in what we can do and to answer and to go
ce qui vient d'être dit,
to add on to what was just said, on the intern,
l'exercice
you need
une analyse d'impact, soit
either to have an impact assessment or responsible AI assessment or something related to the tool, and to be able to understand, because if you don't know what type of data you have, where they are stored, what are the measures implemented, you are not able to measure the risk, to assess the risk related to the use. And I don't tell the risk
est-ce que c'est bien ou c'est pas bien de
whether it's good or not to do it, rather the risk
l'utilisation
toward the use,
conforme et
non-compliant use
de ces data
of this data by the employer
par l'outil, parce que l'outil
or by the tool,
enfin, il y a
because
beaucoup d'outils qui peuvent
there are a lot of tools
les data pour
that can reuse the data for their own account.
séparer
So is it separated from different companies? Are there systems where it will be mutualized?
un data lake, j'en sais
Will
rien.
it be in a data deck? I don't know. And how long will it be stored? And on the intern, what we will do with this data? Will it be used to sanction,
Est-ce qu'elles vont être utilisées pour modifier,
to modify the way the company
déplacer ses salariés?
moves their employees? We need to know why and how is used this data. If we follow the objective of this conference, it's just for cybersecurity, for security. Security of what? Security of the data of the company, security of the employees.
Je pense qu'il faut vraiment faire l'exercice.
We really have to ask yourself this question and to see what you want to do with these tools, because there is a huge impact on salary and on employees' data. We know that we are all tracked down by the mobile phone and smartphones. We all know that. But here, there is a strong intrusion.
Le cadre réglementaire
And the legal framework allow us to ask the right questions, because the privacy of the employees is important, and the employer has a huge power on them, and they won't ask them if they agree or not, because we cannot say, I don't agree.
ce n'est pas basé sur le
It's not based on the consent.
Can I add to that? Because this is fantastic. So the consent is a forced consent, right? Do you consent to this things happening to you? No, you can't use it, but you need it to do your job. You need it to do your life, right? So we have this very significant challenge in our lives. You know, traditionally, technology was a piece of paper and a pen, yeah? And you controlled where that paper went. You controlled what the pen said, because it was your paper, it was your pen, and you could see who had it, yeah? But somebody came behind you, took a picture of it, and oh, now it went somewhere else. Uh-oh, what happened to who got my picture? When you have this technology we're talking about, you have this information. It operates beyond our capacity to understand. We don't really know where our data is going. We can look at a specific enclave, a specific piece of it, right? But we don't understand deeply the third, fourth, fifth order effects of downstream suppliers and downstream providers and how that happens. Then we discover it, like Facebook's a good example, right? And then there's a congressional hearing and everyone's talking about, and then things change. So I guess the point in this is we must approach it without fear, but collaboratively together and discover what's going on, because it's new. You know, I was looking around the room here. So how many in the room were born before the internet existed? Now, most of you who have children or family members or friends, and some in this room, were born after the internet existed. And they've grown up with these things in their hands. I've seen kids who are 3, 4 years old using these things, and I cringe when I see it. I say, get it out of that kid's hand. Yeah? So technology is deeply woven into our lives, the very fabric of our DNA now. You know, if I turn off all technology across entire France, France will have a problem. Yeah, if I do to any country, it's a problem because we're so dependent on this stuff and we don't understand how dependent we are until it's gone, like air. Yeah, once air is gone, you realize you need it, but when it's there, you're just breathing it nicely. So we must learn together how to use these systems and make the laws together and not just wait for the magic law to come and solve it all, because it's not going to happen. It's discovery together and jointly between the systems, the machines, the lawyers, the regulators, and us as a community solving it together. That's why I love this event downstairs. It's not just cyber people. It's not just clients and customers. It's legal, it's regulatory. It's all the components involved to solve the problem jointly.
Michael, I wanted to ask you a question.
Parce qu'on se demande en fait.
A bit simple. UEBA. What is happening at the level of the teams? Does it transform the teams, the SOC and IT teams, this implementation of UEBA?
Completely. Yeah, again, it's a marriage, right? So you're marrying a psychologist together with a, so now you've had children. You got a psychologist there now, you've got a UBA there, yeah, and then they get married and they have children. So you have this very big, complicated family now. So you have a SOC analyst who's traditionally trained to look for indicators of compromise, to look for static operations. He's not a psychologist or she's not a psychologist, right? And now you're asking them to look at behavioral patterns and psychological, and sociological things, and most of them aren't trained in that. So I like companies like SoSafe, for example, who's founded by a psychologist, fusing together the sociology and psychology disciplines together with technology systems. And so you have a completely different kind of person working in your security team. One of the questions, I talk to many CISOs around the world, and one of the questions I ask them is, do you have a behavioral psychologist on your staff? And the answer is usually no. And my question is, why not? Because security, there's a very famous quote from Bruce Schneier. He says, amateurs hack systems, professionals hack people. There is a psychological aspect and a sociological aspect of technology and security in systems. And so and I do this with myself. I have many different psychologists that I talk to and I work with, and behavioral analysts who I work with, because when you get attacked, it changes a behavioral pattern. Like if you crash your car, next time you drive, you're very, very timid how you drive your car. Yeah, so when you're using technology and when you're seeing these new ways of things happening, it's a psychological shock factor to you. So you must bring different kinds of team members, different kinds of skills into your organization. So you bring lawyers to your organization because you are consulting on contract law and how contract law is structured together with the lawyers involving these systems and how they use. You bring psychologists, you bring sociologists, you bring a whole new set of skills into your environment. So we've made the world more complex by connecting it like we have, which means we must bring together disciplines that don't normally talk to each other to operate and to function, because the world has become more complex with these kinds of systems.
Merci.
Thank you. Maud, what is your opinion about this communication between CSO and APO? What is your opinion about these CISO, DPO? Can they communicate with each other and get a common ground on UEBA? Well, everything can be improved. We are all in an objective to better collaborate together. Maybe DPO is an obstacle, is perceived as an obstacle, like a GPD, and a lot of documentations that are more complex. So maybe it is not perceived as a savior, because CISO is a savior rather than an obstacle. So maybe there was a misunderstanding at the beginning. Maybe we should add more instances to this relationship, to add this behavior analysis dimension that goes beyond, from my point of view, only the DPO or the CISO. In the companies, more and more, we can see tools related to AI. And maybe this implementation of a committee dedicated or a person dedicated that would be in charge to be sure that these tools are well used in the company, and how we can control this use, whether through the employer or the use by the employees in the everyday life, in the everyday work. Maybe, yes, there would be a new job, a new position to create. That would be interesting to mix up all these skills. Yes, so the answer.
Can I add to that? Because I love this. This is really, you in English you say you hit the nail on the head. Yeah, this is fantastic. So I was at a very big company with a DPO, and I was trying to do my job, DPO was trying to do his job, and we were kind of at odds on a data protection type system, a insider threat data loss prevention system, right? And I needed access to IP addresses and certain information. He said, that's privacy data, you cannot have that. And we went back and forth a few times, and I was like, look, how about I hang a sign outside the office that says, dear criminal, before you come do anything, please talk to the DPO, because we want to make sure you're not, taking data that you shouldn't have. And he's, oh, Mike, that's mean. I said, look, I'm just making a joke, right? I said, your job is to protect people, and so is mine. Yeah, and we in this company, we had a Protect company name. It was the brand. It was Protect Company, was the name of the program. And then I asked board members, I said, what do you think we're protecting? And they said, IT. I said, no. They said, intellectual property. I said, no. I said, well, what are you protecting? I said, we're protecting the hopes and the dreams of the people that rely on our products. We are protecting the end consumer and the employees and everybody involved in the middle. And most people in my profession don't think that way. We're not taught to think that way. We're taught to think, protect the system, protect this, but we're protecting the ecosystem, the people involved. And so DPO was one of my greatest friends. I want the DPO to make me go slow, to make sure I have the conversation up front, but I also want the DPO to understand that we have the same mission. We're protecting people. We're protecting people in different ways. And if you approach the data privacy officer or the, in Germany, the co-determination labor laws, and same in France, right, there's quite a few of them. If you go up front with the conversation that we are together trying to protect the people, and here's what I look at, here's what you look at, here's why it's needed, when you make that case, 9 times out of 10, they will support you and work with you on it. But if you just say, give me the data I need it, get out of my way, it's not going to go very well, right? So there's a very collaborative spirit of cooperation. What I always say in security is our job is to build coalitions of the willing and the unwilling and work together to solve problems. And DPOs, compliance officers, legal officers, they're extremely important. How would you like to be going down the highway at 150, 160, 200 kilometers an hour without any brakes? You need brakes. They help you slow down when it's important to slow down and make a turn. So that's a wonderful theme you brought up. Thank you for bringing that up, because we really need to have, as you said, increased cooperation. We can always improve, and to always work on that daily to realize we have the same mission, protecting people, employees, consumers, and everybody involved by these criminals who don't care about any of that. They just want to make their money and destroy whatever they touch. They don't care about the consequences. They just want their money.
Alors, ça fait la transition avec la...
Perfect transition for the question I wanted to ask you. Is it possible to avoid AI of UEBA be concerned by the criminals that are more and more sophisticated in their attacks and that try to manipulate the models?
So, anybody eat cheese? Anybody eat butter? Do you use a knife for that? That same knife that cuts your cheese and butters your bread can stab your neighbor. Yeah, so AI is just another knife like buttering your bread. It's just another tool. The intent and how you use it determines what that tool is. And I will tell you, not will they are using it because it works. Yeah, and when you're a criminal and you want to break into an organization, you spend a lot of time analyzing behavioral techniques, what time does this person do, when does this happen, who does that, and oh, they're on vacation now, let me get their credentials, oh, they're not on vacation, so you're using UEBA as criminals. It's something that they want, that they do all the time. So the tools that we use are used by both sides, the good people and the not so good people. The real trick is to make sure that there's more good people using it faster and more responsibly than bad people. Because bad people, they don't have laws, they don't have regulations, they don't care about collateral damage, so they're faster. They have a competitive advantage over us. That's why if you see somebody who runs from a bank robbery and doesn't drive slow, there's 15 chasing one. It's 15 to 1, because the ones chasing this criminal are protecting the people, closing the highways, protecting the innocent, and then that criminal drives across borders. I chased drug dealers when I was in Key West, Florida, across 43 different countries. And when you're chasing a bad guy and they cross international boundaries, you can't follow. You must now hand it off. So the criminals are using the same tools that we use. And they're using them faster because they don't care about regulations. They don't care about society. They don't care about the implications. We do, which means we must cooperate more with each other and build alliances across countries, across boundaries more, across disciplines more, because our unity and our cooperation, they don't have, because they stab each other in the back to make their money. Yeah, so if we bring our greatest strength, which is our unity and our cooperation, we have an element to make a level playing field. So it's a very, very important topic to understand that the tools that we use, so can they, and they can be faster because they don't care.
Tout à fait.
Totally. Maud, we mentioned cyber surveillance. Can we say that it is legal almost with UEBA, this cyber surveillance? Is there a threshold not to cross to respect privacy?
Alors, la première réponse, c'est non.
First, no, that's not legal. There isn't a law saying that, yes, you are allowed to check on the employees. No, there is no surveillance. And if we put it, we have to respect the framework. I don't know if I can say it, but there's a decision that was taken in France in February saying about the implementation of an AI system, and this AI system was suspended by the law, by the court.
Et donc, il a été suspendu sous astreinte
Suspended because
les institutions représentatives du personnel n'ont pas été...
unions of the employees were not consulted on the implementation of this monitoring system, so it was suspended. I think it was €1,000 of sanction, whatever. But so no, and the law does not say that you can do it. The law says you can implement a system under certain condition that you have to respect. And here, when it concerns the employees, you need to inform them, to consult the unions, the right instances, maybe explain. Also a pedagogy work to explain that it's not against them, before them, to help them.
Pas forcément l'accord, mais
at least to explain the real use, the benefits of this monitoring.
C'est tout à fait ça. Et
Totally, yes. And Michael, do you have an idea of how we can convince the workers that UEBA is not against them, is to reinforce the security within the organization? Do you have any techniques?
Yeah, so the best way to convince somebody about something beneficial to them is to talk to them, and to speak with them openly, honestly. Yeah, and so again, we chase drug dealers, right? So when I was doing counter-narcotics operation, chasing drug dealers in Key West, Florida, across many different large cartels and large organizations and in multiple countries, there's certain things that you don't want to share because you don't want the enemy to know your tactics. Because once they know it, yes, let's say you have some informants who are in there doing things for you, and then as soon as they know those informants, they kill them and their families. So you have to protect certain things to protect the people involved in the operation. Right? Same thing with law enforcement. You have undercover police officers. You don't tell everybody, hey, these are the undercover police officers. If you got a problem, go shake their hand because they're going to get shot because they're with the criminals. So you have to find a way to operate in the gray. Yeah, but everybody knows there's undercover officers. Everybody knows there are counter-narcotics operations. Everybody knows it exists, and they know it's there for their protection. And they only know that because we talk about it. And so I'm very active on LinkedIn. Most people in my profession stay away from LinkedIn. I post constantly on LinkedIn about non-technical things, about the benefits of security, about the benefits of these technologies, about how they can help you. I post about companies and the victims and what happened to these victims without releasing things about the victims. And I ask people to come forward and talk about what they went through. And when they share that information, you get this common bond, this commonality, and they say, hey, wow, I don't want to be the one who lost my entire life savings because of something that happened, and if somebody had just had this information, they could have stopped that. You have to find the balance, okay? So the very society and the very structure and the very things we protect are what the criminals exploit against us. Laws, boundaries, borders, yeah? And so we can't just give that up. because then what are we protecting? We just made the Wild West. So we don't want to give every single person who has an iPhone a digital gun and say, hey, you see a criminal, just shoot him in the head with your digital gun. We don't want to do that. And we don't do that with real guns. Yeah, so we do. We have certain laws in certain countries that if you want to have a firearm, you have to go through a background check, you have to go through certain things, you have to register. And so this technology right now, it just slips in the door. And we don't do that yet. And I think the things we're trying to do are very useful because it helps us realize this technology is more pervasive than we realize. So who in this room uses Copilot? You know what Copilot is? Copilot is a Microsoft thing. Yeah? Okay, couple hands. Who uses Office? Yeah? If you use Office, you use Copilot. Did you know that? Because when I asked about Copilot, you didn't raise your hands. So Copilot's inside Office now, whether you want it there or not. It's been infiltrated into your life, yeah, for benefit, but for cost of privacy. And we have to have conversations and let these things be known so people can make informed choices, at the same time not revealing certain things we're doing that tip off the criminals, and then they have an advantage again. So it's a very delicate balance. It's a long answer to a short question. I hope it makes sense.
Est-ce que vous pouvez nous partager un exemple?
Can you share with us an example that allowed you to detect a real threat thanks to the implementation of UEBA? Do you have a real concrete example?
No. Let me give you something different, okay? Because I don't want to talk specifically about UEBA, but I want to talk about the concept behind it, okay? So I was just in New York, and I was meeting with a member of the FBI, and I was just last week, and there's this very nice nonprofit organization. This is a National Cybercrime Alliance. And what they've built is they've built this nonprofit organization that has relationships and members between different large organizations throughout the country. And what they've built is they've built this system of people, of connections, of legal authorities, of permissions to do things. And then as they're watching what's happening in the criminal world, they tell this company, there's a criminal in your network. Now, if I take care of it as a law enforcement agency, I have to go through all these things, I have to go do all these things. But if you take care of it, that doesn't have to happen. And so these systems that were built, and they're looking for behavioral patterns and changes in behavior, legally, by the way, very legally, okay, with authorities to do this. But because they built this structure, there was a case he was telling me about, and they found this criminal stealing a lot of money, okay? And normally, once you find this criminal, to prosecute and find and then stop this person would have taken about 3 years. But because of this organization, they did it in 3 days. In 3 days, what would normally take 3 years, because you've built the relationships, you've built the agreements, you've built the highway of cooperation in place that you needed so you can work fast and share and tell people, and then they do it themselves. Yeah, so if I was collecting information about you, per se, and say, hey, there's a criminal who's trying to steal everything you've worked for your entire life, would you want me to tell you about it? And then if I told you, but I collect that because I was collecting things about you didn't know I was collecting, would you be mad at me? Which one would you rather have? It's a difficult question. Yeah, so we have to figure out how to leverage these things. And that use case, that's real, that exists. It's sanctioned, it's funded, it's real. And that's not the technology, but what made that work is all of the agreements and all of the things built beforehand so you can turn it on and use it legally. Yeah, and I think with these systems, and when we get those conversations, those hard conversations, because they're not easy, and when we get to that point, then we can turn it on a broad scale. But if you try to turn it on a broad scale now, you're just going to make problems for yourself. You're going to have legal problems, you're going to have, so small pilots, small tests, no problem. But really just big, large deployments, I'm not a fan of that, because you're going to get yourself in a lot of trouble.
Thank you very much. Maud,
do you think that with all these rules, is there a risk to block the UEBA use because of A Act or any regulation? There is a break to these new solutions? There is an obstacle or not?
Je sais pas s'il faut vraiment.
I don't know if we should ask this question, because we are building a new ecosystem of laws to use this tool that didn't exist.
Vous m'auriez pas posé la question.
You wouldn't have asked me if I said I am creating a new medicine, a new drug on the market. If I want to create a new medicine and to put it available on the market for all the users and patients, I need to respect a whole range of laws for the person who takes the pill won't die immediately or won't get hallucination, etc. So we are very happy for the test to exist. We are very happy for this legal framework. And today we are creating this framework. I still have the feeling that technology, it's someone running and the law is running behind, and always have this feeling. So yes, we are running behind, but it's necessary to create this framework
Avoir ce qu'on appelle
to have a better trust in these tools, even though they are biased.
Effectivement, on crée des contraintes, mais les contraintes sont
Yes, we create limits, but they are necessary for using these tools.
Voilà, il y a une petite couche.
So today we have a small layer, we will add it on.
Mais ça fait partie des nécessités.
But it is necessary
Et je prends l'exemple très
for
simple.
these tools. And all the tools you use, there is a CE brand. It's all the text that are creating now.
Le règlement sur l'IA, c'est du marque.
Can be for AI document. It is adapted for the softwares. What does it mean? It means that all the tools you use, they won't explode when you have it in your hands.
Ils respectent une certaine.
They respect some standards in terms of security. So yes, we create law, and law would be a way to facilitate the use. Of course, there are disadvantages, but like for everything, for example, you have side effects for medicine, but we try to limit the risks. That's the objective.
So, simple question for you. If I built an airplane in my garage, I went on YouTube, I looked at all the plans, I followed all the plans the way they're written, and I built an airplane in my garage, and I said, you can fly my airplane for $1 anywhere you want in the world, would you get in my airplane? Come on, I built an airplane. I followed everything on YouTube. Well, why wouldn't you get in my... For $2, you would do it. Yeah, okay, right. So this is an excellent point you're making. Technology is so fast. It's moving at light speed, and we move at physical human speed. And so laws try to catch up. But I tell you, when the first airplanes that flew, they were built in somebody's garage, and they were falling out of the air a lot, right? But we solved it. We put in regulations, we put in evaluations. We have the black box now, and so everything is a learning environment and a high-risk learning environment. We haven't gotten there yet in IT, but we're getting there. We must learn and understand implications, and the more we learn and understand implications, the safer we can handle the systems and not be afraid of them. It's a discovery law, discovery learning together, because it's brand new. Yeah, and it's, you know, these didn't even exist when I was born. Yeah, and now they're everywhere.
Justement, avec cette cybersécurité.
Yes, with this cybersecurity that is more and more automated, where is the human in this place? Will it still remain essential or not?
100%. You must have the human. So if I get on a bicycle and I ride my bicycle really fast, and she gets on an e-bike, they're both bicycles. Who's going to go faster and who's going to get tired quicker? You're going to go much faster than me on your e-bike. I'm going to go much slower because I'm an old man and I'm a bit out of shape. Yeah, but your e-bike won't go much faster because the laws in certain countries say it can't go faster than 25, even though it's possible to go faster. Yeah, so technology is an enabler, a human enhancer, like a bicycle, like an e-bicycle. So if you start doing cybersecurity with no humans involved, you are setting yourself up for a very dangerous world. You want to use technology, you want to use these systems to make the human better, to make the human more powerful, to make the human faster, to help protect the individual who's at danger in a quicker and faster way, to be able to move at fast speeds. If you just give that to the AI, okay, so you have a car. Do you let the car, you don't have a car, you have a bike. So if you had a bike that drove itself and did everything by itself, would you take it into the mountains and drive on the mountains? No, why not? Dangerous, yeah? So we will always have humans involved. We must have humans involved. They will just shift in what they work on, yeah? So think about in revolution in farming, right? So when we brought all these new kinds of technologies to farming, industrialized farming, we put a lot of farmers out of business, but we created entire new industries and feed millions and millions of people we couldn't feed before. So it's just a shift. The humans will always be needed, so don't worry, Terminator or whatever these movies are is not going to happen, in my opinion. We always will need the humans involved, especially in security.
Alors avant de conclure, j'allais vous poser une dernière.
Before concluding, I wanted to ask one last question, Michael. With the use of UEBA, your position as a CISO change in your company. Have you seen a change between before and now?
I didn't get the question. Can you ask it one more time? The translation didn't come.
Est-ce que, selon vous,
So according to you, the use of UEBA changed your position in your company?
vous allez être mieux perçu?
Are you better perceived, less well perceived by the workers?
So I'm not going to answer that question because I'm going to say that UEBA is not widely deployed in my company.
Okay.
It's not something, I don't think it's a mature technology yet. And I don't recommend any company to just deploy it in mass somewhere. What I do recommend and what I do and I encourage to be done is to experiment with it and learn from it in small, controlled environments. Very small, very controlled environments, very permissive environments where you've asked for permission, you've asked for people who want to be involved, and to use it in this manner. I am not a fan of putting it in place blindly and just turning it on. I'm not a fan of being fast with it without learning and doing use cases. So I will always speak about the benefits of the technology and what it can do for you, but every single company is different, and how you adopt it and apply it is going to be different. And so my recommendation to anybody that's thinking about this and wants to use this is go slow to go fast. Use controlled pilots, use controlled areas, test how it works, test the implications of it, speak to your legal teams, speak to your labor unions if you have them in your companies, and really take your time and do it together, because it's not this magic switch you turn it on and the world is saved and everything's fine, and no, it's not like that. It's a very complex system, very complex tool, and if you have a vendor that comes to you and says, this is so simple and so perfect, just plug it in and turn it on, ask them please to delete your phone number, because it's not.
Et vous, Maud, quels seraient les conseils?
And what about you, Maud? What would be your advice to the companies, to the organization that maybe hesitate to implement UEBA in terms of laws, maybe to reassure them? Do you have an advice? I would like to follow the advice from Mike. Do it step by step. Discuss with DPO legal team to see little by little the different type of data, because it's not the same when you are in a very close environment and then you scale up with different kind of employees, and when you are at a group level, well, you will use data for all the countries with multiples of regulation. Even though RGPD is European, there are some specificities by country for the regulation of the use of data of the employees. So you have to go step by step. This way it will also be easier to see how you can use these tools from the point of view of the law and say, okay, in this country it worked, it went well, maybe we can scale up. Would you like to add something from this advice for the companies that hesitate to implement UEBA?
So I can only echo what was said. Don't be afraid. Don't fear it, but don't be cavalier. Don't be a cowboy, as we say in America, and shoot from the hip, right? Don't do this, right? Take your time, do it in a controlled experiment. Don't build the plane in your garage and offer it for €1 a seat. Yeah? Take your time, understand it, use it very slowly, have specific use cases and deep conversations with the legal parties, especially in different countries you're in. If you're looking for a fast solution, you're going to get a fast problem. So there's a saying in America, if you want it badly, you get it bad. So take your time, learn, explore, but do not be afraid. It's just another technology. But spend your time understanding the implications and talking to the right people, and do it safely.
Je tiens à vous remercier tous les deux d'avoir.
Thank you, you both, for this roundtable. Are there any more questions, maybe, before closing? Maybe a question?
Thank you. I have a question about the limit between law and behavior solution. How you can protect person with RGPD in France? And do you think that anonymization solution can be the good solution for that?
Je ne sais pas si ça peut fonctionner.
I don't know if may work with a total anonymization because it is based on a behavior analysis. By definition, it will put some localization points. So I don't have the technical answer.
I don't know if it's possible to use anonymous solution.
Not anonymous, anonymization, data anonymization.
Sorry, yes.
So, and her answer is quite correct. How do you anonymize a behavior of a person? It's anonymous behavior. So you can derive patterns, right, and anonymize the patterns. Hey, these patterns are anomalous and they don't match the normal environment. But then what do you do with it? Yeah. So it's normally tied to a human being and it's tied to something. So it's a very good question. It's a very difficult thing to tackle. So anonymization techniques, encryption techniques that we're using for the privacy space, they're very valuable, and you have to figure out, do you anonymize and lose the value and the benefit? Then there's no sense in doing it. Or do you still able to derive the benefit? So I speak to vendors all the time who are collecting usage patterns. They're collecting UEBA on criminals, right? Tactics and TTPs. Hey, in these industries, here's what they're doing. They're doing these things. Now that data, we're happy to collect that because they're criminals. But we don't share that very well. And because the company that it's being collected says, wait, that's my company. I don't want you sharing that. So that kind of stuff you can anonymize and say, hey, look, these are just usage patterns in this particular industry assigned to this particular threat actor because they're criminals and we'll tell them what they're doing, but won't say what company we got it from, won't say where it came from. These kind of things are okay. But in a specific company, using behavioral patterns in that company, if it's about an individual, it's not anonymized, yeah? And so the behavioral pattern can be nice, but then what do you do with it if you don't see where the source is? So it's a very tricky situation. And depending on the kind of cases that you're having, if you're actively tracking a criminal and you have authority to do these things, then you could actually use these models. But just random anonymize the solution, again, it's not going to happen, yeah? Because there's many layers and kinds of anonymization. And how you anonymize and what you anonymize, at what level in the actual technology stack you do it, has implications. And again, if you're collecting behavioral patterns of a human being and you try to anonymize it away from that human being, it starts to lose its value.
Merci à tous.
Thank you, all of you, for participating to this roundtable. I will conclude here. If you have any more questions, we are still a bit here. Otherwise, thank you and have a good day. Bye.